of get it in a, like, oh yeah, I get the naturalist, like, this is not an affront, this is not an offence. I don't understand the nudist areas that have, like, incredibly, like, busy banks and shops and things. And I'm like, this doesn't seem necessary.
Right, I think I come down somewhere like, I understand why you would do naked sunbathing. I understand why you would do naked swimming. I feel like these are activities where being naked would add to your enjoyment of the act. I don't quite understand why you would do naked shopping, because then you're just being perceived to an unnecessary degree.
Like, as someone who wears women's clothing, I can confirm that not having pockets is very inconvenient at a lot of times.
It's the worst. Just
Anyway,
absolutely dreadful. Anyway,
do you want to talk about Hamlet?
sure, let's talk about Hamlet. Welcome, dear listener, to Analysis Roulette, where today we are talking about nudism and Hamlet.
Probably not together, but I don't know where your theory has led us.
Probably not in no, probably not directly in conversation with each other conceptually. Just both these things are happening. I am one of your hosts. My name is Doug. Pronouns he, they. With me is Dia.
Pronouns are they, them.
So everyone say hello, Dia.
And despite our conversation up to this point, I assume we are both fully dressed.
I am wearing all of my clothes. Yes, we're not on webcam.
All at once.
Yes, I'm very round. I look like the Michelin Man. It's the opposite of laundry day. Laundry day was yesterday. Everything is clean. I'm wearing it all.
It's just me getting on a plane anywhere.
Right.
Just to avoid excess baggage charges, I am going to wear all my clothes.
Right. The suitcase contains 3 pairs of boots and 6 books. Nothing else fits in there, therefore I am wearing them. 3 hoodies is fine.
Yes. Exactly. You can't penalise me, even on a Ryanair flight, for wearing lots of clothes.
I assume this to be true. I've not flown enough to test it, but it seems like a thing that would be true. Should we talk about
Like
Hamlet?
they'd run into hot water asking people to remove clothes before travelling.
We're instituting
Anyway,
space
Hamlet.
flight rules where you have to register your weight and then we weigh you, and if your coat is too heavy, you can't take it with you.
Welcome to Analysis Roulette, the podcast where we really did intend to talk about Hamlet, but we're both very easily sidetracked.
the podcast which is suffering with its intellectual focus. Yes.
What if just the entire podcast we never get round to Hamlet?
That would be a very Hamlet thing to do.
Yeah, it would be. It's meta. It's a meta commentary.
Thematic. Yeah.
No. What we do is we both just talk about gay thoughts we have had. And then at the very end we go, so Hamlet. Oh yeah, that. And then it ends.
That is more or less my theory of Hamlet, yes. We'll get to my theory of Hamlet. First, we should define Hamlet for the listener, who may not know what Hamlet is.
Which way round are we doing this? Because last week we switched it round because I didn't want to explain Earthsea.
Do you want to explain Hamlet as a superior expert in literary matters?
Oh, crikey. My knowledge of literary matters comes to a very abrupt end circa 1408.
Which is shortly before Shakespeare.
Sometime before Shakespeare, yes. But Hamlet, otherwise known as the tragedy of Hamlet, Prince of Denmark, is one of Shakespeare's tragedies written at some point in the late 16th century, possibly very early 17th. One of the sort of Wikipedia roster of facts about it is it's available in a couple of different forms in different quartos. It's the longest Shakespeare play. It is set in Denmark, and it is considered one of the most powerful tragedies. There's a reason that it is the one that actors are smug about having performed. Or rather, are performatively not smug about having performed, because you don't need to be smug, because everybody knows if you were Hamlet, it's because you were the best actor available.
Yes, you can name drop that you played Hamlet. Obviously, it wasn't a big deal.
And also, it occupies a fairly unique space within local and community theatre, which is, if you played Hamlet in a great theatre, it's because you were the best actor in the country. If you performed Hamlet in a lesser theatre, it's because you were the most annoying actor in that area.
As in the person who would make everyone's life miserable if they were not cast as Hamlet?
Yes.
Yes, I see.
But I don't know if I'm gonna really go in on the details of the plot, because I feel like this is actually not a very plot-heavy section of analysis. I will say that I reread Hamlet 3 weeks ago and have already forgotten which characters are which, because there's a lot of people in it who are just kind of there.
Yes. There are various things I think we need
However,
to sort of put on the table about Hamlet.
it is essentially a revenge tragedy in the model of Greek tragedies, in which Prince Hamlet of Denmark's father has recently died, the previous King Hamlet. He is the nephew of the new king, Claudius, who has married his Hamlet's mother, not Claudius's mother, Prince Hamlet's mother, Gertrude, and taken over the throne. There's a lot of background drama involving a potential invasion by Norway until the ghost of King Hamlet appears, and the sentries who witness him, as well as Hamlet's friend Horatio, decide that Hamlet is the best qualified to deal with the ghost, somewhat famously within internet meme circles, because he went to university.
Yeah. That's why they bring Horatio in, actually. They're like, Horatio, you're a scholar.
Yes, which is extremely
What do we do
relatable
with
to
a
me.
ghost?
Which is extremely relatable to me as someone who regularly gets Facebook messages out of the blue going, hey, weird question. Do you know anything about Norwegian witchcraft? And I have to be like, yes, I do. Or more frequently, do you want to do some Latin grammar? And the answer is yes, excitement, because I'm a very peculiar person. Where did I get up to? Oh yeah, ghost appears. The court gathers. Various court drama. Hamlet decides to see the ghost for himself, and the ghost appears to him and tells Hamlet that he was murdered by Claudius and demands that Hamlet avenge him. I will say the next rest of play is pretty much central plot. Hamlet wrangling with this sort of mission from the dead, whilst various other court dramas occur around him, culminating in the speech that everybody knows and everybody quotes.
There are a couple of those, to be fair. Hamlet is big on soliloquies.
Hamlet is big on soliloquies, but I think if you say the one everybody quotes, people know you mean to be or not to be. That is the question.
That is A1 everybody knows, although weirdly in the copy that I'm currently searching, it's not coming up. I don't control Fing the text and it's like, this is not here.
Oh my god, it's the Mandela effect.
I'm sure I remember seeing it, just set phrase not found. Open source Shakespeare has failed me, it's not there.
I had a paper copy, but I have not brought it into my recording tent to avoid rustly paper noises.
Yeah.
But I will say, I once went to a seminar on Shakespeare in the modern world where a retired actor turned academic was talking about Hamlet, and he discussed that one of the best things he's ever had as an actor was when he said he always dreaded to be or not to be, because it's the one part of the show that the audience probably knows better than you do.
The audience is muttering along.
Yeah, and he said the actual best performance of it he ever did was when he only got as far as to be, and somebody quite drunk in the audience at the Globe yelled, or not to be, and he did the entire soliloquy as a back and forth with this drunken audience member, which he attempted to recreate.
The whole ghost
it worked so well. He recreated it with the audience in the room at this seminar, and it was amazing. It was so good. But yes, eventually, everybody, rocks fall, everybody's dying. Hamlet does, in fact, kill Claudius, but quickly dies from a four-delivered poison and names the Prince of Norway as his successor.
Who has conveniently just invaded that minute.
Yeah, which is all very well timed. And Horatio wants to commit suicide, but Hamlet, with his dying breath, begs him to go on, tell his story, presumably help the Prince of Norway take over the country.
Right.
And then, yeah, everybody dies except Horatio. All of the invaders are there, and Hamlet gets a military funeral. So I guess that's a happy ending.
I guess so. It's a very...
I'm skimming over a lot of middle, because I don't know which parts of it would be relevant.
Right. And this is the thing that I want to say sort of before we get... Well, not sort of before we get into, but there are some things I think we need to put on the table about Hamlet the play. One of which is hardly anything happens.
It's a lot of
This is
words.
A play without a lot of movement to it.
It has a very low actions to words ratio.
Yes, a lot of people have conversations. Hamlet, the protagonist, spends most of the play kind of walking in a circle, not
Yeah.
not acting. No, you're not taking action, but no one else is really taking action either. It's a play that feels to me like it has a lot of killing time in the middle.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there are a few debated academically sources for it, but several of them are ones I've studied in the original because I'm extremely cool, including Hrolsaga Kraka, which is a Icelandic saga in which so much happens. Oh my god. Page 1, murder. Page 2, another murder. Page 3, another murder. It just keeps going. This feels like the Kids Bop version of Hrolsaga Kraka.
We took away all the offensive bits and we're left with just sort of fluff and filling.
Except that, like, it isn't. And that's the
Right.
most
All the
interesting
action.
thing about it.
There are several murders in it.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of murder. It's just not like Viking murders.
No, they're weirdly comedic murders, actually. Which is another thing I want to put out there on Hamlet, is that Hamlet is not one of the comedies, and it's not sort of primarily funny, but there is a
But it is
fairly
quite
major
funny.
character, Polonius, who is a comic turn the whole way through, because his whole bit is that he is a pompous idiot who is constantly giving out advice and has the worst plans, and everyone is nodding politely and going along with his advice as he comes up with just the worst plans.
Indeed. And also there is actually just a lot of funny dialogue. And don't get me wrong, funny dialogue is one of Shakespeare's strengths in all of his plays.
Right, it's never a surprise when he has a good line.
There's a lot of out of nowhere funny dialogue. This is not a play that shoots out the clowns. I mean, it is in a literal sense, but you know what I mean. It's not a play that sort of alternates between the funny bits and the tragic bits. It's quite funny the whole way through.
Hamlet himself has some wonderfully catty lines.
Yes.
What else is there? This is a play that is notionally set in Denmark, but everyone has Latin names.
Yep.
We're just
I
gonna
mean,
have
to
to
be
go with that.
fair,
Look, I don't know a lot about Denmark. I just feel like Claudius is not a very Danish name.
yeah, I just think it would probably not have done as well with the Elizabethan crowds if it had been like the story of Hror and Helgi and
You feel like
Amlvi.
Polonius might have been more accessible at the time.
Yeah, just a little bit. I just don't think we would still be talking about the sort of tragedy of Frosti, Prince of Denmark.
That's probably true. This is another thing I want to put. This is a controversial opinion I have about Hamlet. I think we are only talking about it because it is Shakespeare. I think if
Ooh,
Hamlet was by
spicy.
anyone else, it wouldn't have the same reach. I think nobody could agree on what Hamlet means. This could be because it is unfathomably brilliant, or it could be because it's the opposite of that and doesn't really mean very much. But we have to analyze it because it's Shakespeare. So we
Bold
have to
choice
approach it
to
as
get
part of
us.
the totality of the bard. So it has
I
to
think
be
it's a.
important.
I think it's a very bold choice to get a cancelled 5 episodes in.
Oh, I am getting us cancelled 3 or 4 times in this episode. Yeah.
We made it through Flat Earth, and
We
this
made it
is
through
where you
Flat Earth,
choose
and
to
it's Hamlet.
torpedo us.
I am getting us cancelled over Hamlet. Yes.
I'm now really wishing I had rewatched it again within the last week because this was originally meant to happen 2 weeks ago, and I rewatched before that. And now I've forgotten a lot of my favourite bits in detail. So I'm going to be doing a really poor showing for the Hamlet Defence Squad, and for that I apologise, dear listener.
I do not wish to cancel Hamlet. I come not to
I
praise
mean,
Hamlet, but to cancel him. It's I have seen Hamlet more than once voluntarily, so it can't be that bad, even by my standards. And whenever I have watched Hamlet, I have had a reasonably good time. I have never come away from Hamlet feeling particularly expanded by the experience.
I will say, while I am definitely very much on the Hamlet Defence Squad, a big Hamlet enjoyer, I will say it is actually a play I think I prefer to read than watch. I think it is a good play to study because it is a very crunchy play. But I cannot really empathise with the school of thought that this is the greatest dramatic role that any actor can ever take.
Yes, I think that in particular is something that is just
I think we've just invented
reputation
it.
reinforcing itself.
And I think we have invented it entirely because holding up a skull whilst addressing it in a sort of emotionally torn monologue is a really good photo op, even
It is
before
cool.
photography.
It is cool.
But I am personally of the opinion that it's not even the most emotionally moving role in Hamlet.
Oh no! If you want to do the tearjerk, you want to be Horatio.
It's Rise.
Horatio is the character who has all of the chances to look at the audience and be like, "Are you crying yet? You should be crying."
I will also
Especially
say
at the end of the play. If you get the last word
yeah,
and the last word is tragedy, it is your emotions that the people remember.
exactly. And I will also say my first encounter with Hamlet, and this is maybe revealing why I'm like this as a person, but when I was about 7, I was given as a gift a big box set of sort of animated puppet style Shakespeare plays, which included most of them. I think the only ones it didn't have were the histories. And I did not understand Hamlet aged 7.
I'm just gonna step in and say, Kermit the Frog would make an amazing Hamlet.
Oh my god, Kermit
I can see
understands
Kermit
Hamlet.
doing the skull monologue, and it's beautiful.
But yeah, what
Complete
I
with
was
the
going
bit
to
where you
say
get the
is
skull
that
monologue, and then the next line is, "This skull is stinky."
yeah,
He goes straight from the skull
my god,
monologue to being like, "This
why
skull smells bad," and puts it down again.
why is why is Muppet version not a school of analysis in our hat?
We can put it in next season.
It's going in next season. But my point being, I will say, I didn't understand Hamlet aged 7 because I did not understand a lot of things aged 7.
Who's among us understood anything we read aged 7? I guess
I'm,
maybe
I,
because we
I,
read age-appropriate things aged 7, but I was not one of those children.
I remember really liking The Tempest, and I'm still not sure if that was because I liked The Tempest or because I liked the visual effects on Ariel. I will, however, say, Puppet Hamlet fucked. It's just a very good puppet show.
Miss
It just
Piggy would be a
works, you know?
remarkable take on Ophelia.
I remember because they were these sort of gaunt, slightly ghoulish, like they were not nice looking puppets. They were kind of zombie punch a doody puppets.
Oh, nice.
And it worked, man. It was just a good vibe. Anyway, do you want to talk about gay thoughts?
I do want to talk about gay thoughts about Hamlet.
So, do you want to give us a rundown before we get into our gay thoughts
Mhm.
on Hamlet? Do you want to give us a quick rundown of what we mean by queer theory?
Here is where we again suffer from me not knowing things.
Do you want to say what you think it is, and I'll correct you?
I think it is the theory that there might be queer content in things, even if it wasn't necessarily written to have it. Um,
Pretty much correct. The thing that trips people
yeah,
up with queer theory is it is I looked it up on Wikipedia just to make sure that I was like not pulling things
yeah.
completely out of my arse, and
I did that, and
I
then I
do.
forgot it again.
Yeah, and my favorite thing is that Wikipedia reminds me that queer theory is officially a field of post-structuralism because I love that, because what is queerness if not saying not that?
Right.
But essentially queer theory is a kind of used as an umbrella term. Officially, it's the idea that not everything is heterosexual and cisgender.
Yeah.
In practice, it is gay thoughts, gay facts, and also rejection of norms, which are 3 actually very different approaches.
Yes. So my sort of uninformed feeling on it is that queer theory is when you look at a text and you say, "So what's going on here?" And your "So what's going on here" comes with a willingness for the answer to be gay stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a very good sort of working interpretation, because the problem with academic theories is none of them mean anything. We encountered this when we did post-structuralism.
We
We
had this
encountered
problem
this
with
when we did
post-structuralism, and
Marxism.
I had to get you to give me a little tutorial on what post-structuralism was first.
Yeah, and like we encountered this last time when we talked about Marxism. The
Yeah.
thing with academic theory is academic theories are buckets in which we put the thoughts people have. But no two people have the same thoughts, so we have to make really big buckets.
Yeah. The buckets can overlap. It's
And
a complicated system.
queer theory is a bucket that contains all the gay stuff.
All the gay stuff. All of it. Hamlet is a very interesting one from this perspective, actually, because Hamlet does not contain all of the gay stuff.
I mean, I have a crowbar right here.
Well, then this is what I'm saying: is you can do a queer reading of Hamlet,
Yeah,
and you can do a straight reading of Hamlet, and I think you kind of have to work about the same level of. You have to work hard to do either of those readings.
it's a
You you
play
you you
which
have to
does a
interpret.
lot. Yeah, you have to interpret to consume Hamlet. It is simply not a thing that you can consume brain off in any capacity, especially not if what you're thinking about is identity and relationships, which is
And
kind of the linchpin of queer theory.
this is probably partly why Hamlet has become one of the the standard great plays in English, is that it gives you a lot to talk about with your friends down the pub afterwards.
Mm.
It's very easy to disagree in a friendly and productive way about what's going on in Hamlet, in a way where if you take some of the comedies, if you take A Midsummer Night's Dream, it's easy to argue about what was happening there, but not in an interesting way,
Yeah.
just in a disagreement way. Whereas with Hamlet, you can have a debate. It gives you
Hamlet
content to
truly
debate about.
was, in many ways, Hamlet was the original BBC Sherlock.
Yes, Hamlet is queer baiting. There's a there's a case to be made that Hamlet is queer baiting.
Okay, I know we haven't talked about how we're doing episode titles yet, but can I please suggest Does Hamlet is queer baiting?
I'm happy for it to be that, because let's get cancelled before we even start.
Look, we've already agreed we're getting cancelled this week. Let's just go all in. Let's piss off the John Locke conspiracy people.
There is no John Locke conspiracy, people.
Oh, they still exist.
I
We've just
know.
both successfully
There was
blocked
there
all
was a
of them.
comma there was a comma in that sentence. It's fine. Okay, so what I want to do is sort of start by, because as you say, queer interpretations of anything comes down to the relationships. So let's just sort of frame out the relationships we can think about in this way in Hamlet. We are going to ignore most of the bit part characters. There's a lot of people coming and going, and the play is very careful to make sure we know their names, and then they go off and be ambassadors or whatever. Or they're guards who we only see in Act 1 and then never come back.
Yes, and quite a lot of them are little doubles, and unbelievable amounts of paper has been devoted to analysing what their relationship with one another is.
Right, there's a lot of little pairs. Having been in plays, sometimes my interpretation of this is we had a couple of guys who had really good chemistry.
Yeah,
So I
I
wrote the
mean,
play so I could reuse the two guys as a double act repeatedly. And this was part of the humor, is that it's, oh, these two guys again, and now they've got a third set of names because they're a different double act this time. That's funny.
yeah.
But when they show back up as the gravediggers, and it's like, oh, it's the pair of guards who's also the pair of ambassadors who now are a pair of gravediggers. That's funny.
In many ways, Shakespeare truly was a secondary school drama teacher.
Yes. Yes, I think you have to. I think it's different. I think it is incorrect to approach Shakespeare as a writer without keeping in mind that he was writing for a specific set of players who he worked with all the time.
Yeah, and that is a thing that has advantages and disadvantages,
Yes.
as
In
seen in BBC
very
Sherlock.
but in very much the same way as Gilbert and Sullivan. Part of the structure
Yeah,
of a Gilbert and Sullivan play is that there will be a comic baritone and he will have a patter song.
yeah. It's also,
Because we
it's
have a
very much
guy who's
like,
good at those. So we write him
yeah.
a song.
And like in modern musical theatre, you get a similar thing where if you are from one half of the Broadway West End divide, I'm just ignoring the entire rest of the world, when
Yeah.
you listen to things that were created on the other side of that divide, there will occasionally be a giant musical cue where some very excited character goes, "Oh my god, guys, he's coming, the one you're all excited about!" And then some guy you've never heard before in your life starts singing.
You can just say Washington, it's fine.
It is Washington is the biggest example of this, but I at least knew who Christopher Jackson was.
I
I
did,
had
but I didn't
absolute
know who George Washington was, so it still kind of landed.
Yeah, contrast me. I had a pretty good knowledge of people who had been in previous Lin-Manuel Miranda projects. I had never heard of Aaron Burr when Hamilton got big.
Oh, I had never heard of Aaron Burr, but I had heard of George Washington, and I knew he was kind of important. So that bit, I was like, okay, I get what's happening here. It's this guy.
I had a vague concept of which of the names I was hearing were household names, and that was not a very good concept.
Yeah, I knew who
But
George
yes,
Washington was. I think that was more or less the one of the guys who I knew who it was. This is irrelevant to anything we're talking
this is
about. At
not
some point, we
relevant to
should put
Shakespeare.
Hamilton in the hat.
Is Hamilton not in the hat?
I don't know if Hamilton's in the hat. I can't remember. If Hamilton's not in the hat, we should put Hamilton in the hat.
Hamilton will at some point be in the hat. It
Yes.
might not currently be.
then we'll have to do some kind of bizarre Jungian interpretation of it, and we will regret.
Oh my god, Jungian Hamilton. I'm
It would be
so
great,
here for
actually.
it. It
I'm
will be
really looking
amazing.
forward to the
No,
first
no,
time
no,
we
no,
do
no, no, no,
Jungian anything.
no, no. That's going to be once Muppet AU is in the hat.
Muppet Hamilton.
I would give a kidney for Muppet Hamilton.
Anyway, relationships in Hamlet, to sort of frame out our scope.
Okay, for anybody playing along at home, now's the time to get out the conspiracy board.
Get out your conspiracy board, get out your bingo sheets. But we have Hamilton. That's a crossover. We have Hamlet himself and his relationship with Horatio, sort of going in by order of appearance. We
The
have
Sherlock
Hamlet,
and John.
the Sherlock and John. Very much so. Horatio is telling us this story in much the same way diegetically as
Oh yeah, I meant my BBC Sherlock comparison.
Yeah.
A, sincerely, and B, to be continued.
Yes, Horatio is the Watson of this story because he is telling this story. We have Hamlet and his relationship with Ophelia.
The Molly.
I've not seen enough Sherlock because to know who Molly is. Because I watched 2 episodes and I was like, I'm not enjoying this, and then I stopped.
She is Louise
I once
Brealey,
again
and
I'm
she
cancelled.
is very sad. She is what I would like to describe as the red flag of the show. Like, even if you watch episode 1 and you think this is going places, you do encounter Molly and go, oh, it might not be.
They might be going to bad places.
Those places might be not good for women.
Yeah. We have the wicked King Uncle Claudius and
The
Gertrude.
Moriarty. I'm going to stop, I promise.
No, I please tell me which Sherlock character Queen Gertrude is.
Well, no, because then there'd have to be like 3 whole women in Sherlock.
That would be difficult.
Well,
Molly
actually, no.
again,
There'd have to be a woman who Sherlock couldn't conceivably have sex with in Sherlock.
Tricky. Not a problem Hamlet has. There is no suggestion of Hamlet and doing any kind of incest with his mother. You'll be pleased to hear if you're not familiar with the play.
I don't think Hamlet knows how to sex.
Well, this is one of my theories, actually.
Good, we're getting into it.
Hamlet is, in fact, Ace King Hamlet.
And I respect that.
I think it's actually a very valid reading, but we'll get to it. There is also a sort of Horatio's relationships with various people are a bit too many names. Hamlet's relationships tend to be quite fraught. So I've sort of laid out the 3 romantic or possibly romantic setups there to think about, but it is worth remembering that Hamlet is just constantly fighting with everyone. The ghost turns up to tell him off for being useless. He straight up murders Polonius. He has a great big fight with his mother. He gets Rosencrantz and Guildenstern killed fully on purpose.
Yeah.
For not exactly petty reasons, but there are other ways to handle it. He could have not got them killed. He chose to get them killed. But I really want to look at that. I'm kind of taking that we have an unambiguous, romantic, if also political, pairing between Claudius and Gertrude. Like, that to me reads like, yes, these are 2 people who are romantically and sexually involved and also doing politics and murder. Classic Shakespeare combination. You only have to look at them slightly sideways for Claudius and Gertrude to become Macbeth and Lady Macbeth.
Yeah. It's Lady Macbeth if Lady Macbeth kept her thoughts about murder inside her head sometimes.
If she didn't have the soliloquies because someone else was doing the soliloquies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Taking that as a model for what someone in kind of a similar, if not identical, but Horatio, what is it with? It's because it's literally because I've got the script on screen and my eyes keep landing on the word Horatio. I'm going to go to a different tab. There we are. So this is kind of the model of what a correct and appropriate heterosexual relationship would look like for Hamlet, if that makes sense. I mean, not perfectly, because also there's a remarriage shortly after a murder, and it is by certainly religious definitions of the time. I think the taboo has softened a bit for us in these modern times, but at the time that's just straightforwardly incestuous, because She's married to old Hamlet. Old Hamlet dies, and then she marries Claudius, who is old Hamlet's brother, and that
This
is
is
taboo.
notably the exact thing that Catherine of Aragon was accused of being cursed over, which was not that long ago.
Right, and how consanguineous can you be and also marry was a thing for Henry VIII as part of his various complications. The whole question of who kings
It
can
was very
marry.
specific. Yeah, who kings can marry, but very specifically the question of can someone who has married their late husband's brother produce a male heir was a major issue for Henry VIII.
Yeah,
It's this whole thing you might have heard about called the Church of England.
you may have heard of the Church of England. It was sort
Brought
of
to you by
happening at
Six the
around this
Musical.
time. It's easy to forget that Shakespeare was writing at a time of high religious turmoil, and by religious turmoil we mean we were having a Protestant Reformation.
We'd very recently been burning Catholics.
Right, we only just stopped.
Yes. This is a play with context.
This is a play with context, and part of the context is how bad is it for a country if kings marry incestuous queens?
Of that context, and one that is much talked about and always talked about in ways that I think are unbelievably boring, is the probably recent death of Shakespeare's 11-year-old son, Hamlet.
Yeah,
Every
you can
single
see.
article I have ever read about how this play is full of grief and Shakespeare was potentially a grieving father whilst writing it has been terrible. But that doesn't
Right.
mean good and important context. It just means that we're stupid as a scientific and academic community.
No, I think it is good context. I think it's exactly the sort of thing that prompts you to write a play about grief. But then you can read too much into you shouldn't turn that into an allegory.
Is the
That
version I
seems to
see
me more
most
likely to be a
often of that
thematic leap.
context is, oh, Shakespeare based this on a play with a happy ending and he made the ending sad because he was sad. And I'm just like, oh my god. If that was the level this guy was working on, he would not have written this many plays that lasted this long.
Right. Thematically, write a play about grief because you're grieving. Fully willing to believe it. That doesn't make this an allegory.
No.
Because he was still a competent writer of plays.
My hot take, Shakespeare was good at writing.
Ooh, now we're cancelled.
Spicy, I know. It's going to be unpopular with the anti-English class crowd on Tumblr.
Yeah. So we have this kind of model of what heirs to the throne should be doing, which is that they should be making heterosexual matches that are both passionate enough to be likely to produce heirs and politically viable,
Or at the very least, dutiful.
or at the very least dutiful. So we have in Ophelia, we have the first kind of failure to perform that heterosexual role.
Yes.
Ophelia is the daughter of one of the nobles of court. She is Polonius's daughter. Polonius is the comically bad advisor, but within the context of the play, he is a valued and trusted advisor who is a noble of the court. Although comically bad, this does not reduce his status.
Yeah.
She is not quite explicitly, because there's a whole chunk of the first half of the play that is about her family members telling her to ditch Hamlet. Because she's not sufficiently noble for him to marry her, so he's clearly just going to spoil her reputation and jilt her. So she should make sure to put a stop to that before anything untoward can be rumored to have happened.
Yeah.
Which she does, and then it becomes a very awkward time for everyone at the court because Hamlet is at this time pretending to be mad. This is unclear to me why he thinks this is going to help, and indeed it doesn't. I think this is important to note about Hamlet, is Hamlet's entire plan is, my dad's ghost has turned up and told me to avenge him. I shall pretend to go mad. Question mark, question mark, question mark, revenge.
We get a lot of Hamlet's inner thoughts and very little of his inner logic.
Yes, we know that Hamlet is having a bad time, but why he has chosen this path to resolving his bad time never becomes clear. Everyone around court is speculating on why is Hamlet behaving like this. Maybe he has run mad with love. Maybe this is because Ophelia dumped him. So we're going to set up chance meetings between them and spy from behind the staircases to see if he's just lovesick, and then we're going to decide that he isn't, because he's just really mean to Ophelia.
Yeah.
Consequently, or at least subsequently, Ophelia goes mad for real, and there is a deliberate ambiguity. She goes flower picking by the river and falls or jumps in, and there is a textual ambiguity that the characters in the play are arguing over. Was this suicide or was this an accident? But the last time we see Ophelia alive, she is performing madness more convincingly than Hamlet is, at the very least. It's not a very successful heterosexual relationship. Neither of them, frankly, seem very good at it.
No.
In contrast to that, which is this sort of failed heterosexual relationship, we have this not quite gay relationship with Horatio. So Horatio is Hamlet's classmate from university.
Yes. Where he apparently studied ghosts.
Where he apparently studied ghosts in Wittenberg.
Yeah. I mean, that
So
is where you'd go.
Right, obviously. Horatio has come over to the Danish court, so I had to remember whether we were in Denmark or Norway. Come over to the Danish court for the old king's funeral, presumably the new king's coronation and wedding, but mainly to see and sort of to be a supportive presence for Hamlet, which is itself a contrast with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, his other classmates, who he eventually gets murdered, who have come over because the king and queen ask them to, and they're like, "You're Hamlet's friends. Solve him, please. He's a problem."
I mean, is that not deeply relatable?
It is deeply relatable, but Horatio is written as a contrast to it because he just comes over because he wants to support his friend.
Basically, the difference is Horatio brought a quiche and Guildenstern and Rosencrantz brought flowers.
I guess. It's more that Horatio turned up and said, "I heard the news, I came right away." And Rosencrantz and Guildenstern turned up for the funeral and said, "Oh, your mum told us that you were having a bad time."
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I did put on Facebook that I was having a bad time. You should have known that if we were actually friends. But okay.
Yeah. Hamlet is just out here posting selfies with a fringe that he just got, and neither of them are sending a "Are you alright" text.
Right, they are not checking in with their blokes.
Yeah.
Horatio sticks around for the whole play, and throughout is kind of on Hamlet's side of events. He's not in all of the pivotal scenes by any means. He pops up a lot as someone for Hamlet to monologue at in a way that is distinct from a soliloquy.
Including the "Alas, poor Yorick" line, which is addressed to Horatio.
Yes, he delivers that speech about how Yorick is this memento mori because
Yorick was life and soul of the party.
Yorick was the life and soul of the party, as was Ophelia, they are literally sort of hiding in the grave watching Ophelia be buried. Hamlet doesn't go to her funeral, which I think is, again, a failure to be correctly heterosexual in this context.
So, to be fair, she only just got a proper funeral. It is mentioned, if not for her sort of high rank and the intervention of Claudius, she would have been buried in a pauper's grave with no ceremony, because she is believed to have committed suicide.
It's true, but Queen Gertrude is there.
Yes, because the royal parents, Claudius and Gertrude, intervened to get her the full burial, while Hamlet does not even appear at it.
Right. Whereas Hamlet doesn't show up there and is instead hiding out in the graveyard, revealing himself not to be as young as we might otherwise speculate. There's a line of speculation that says, why has Hamlet's uncle inherited instead of him? One line of speculation is, well, it's because he's too young and this is a regency, but that can't be true because Yorick has been dead for 23 years and Hamlet remembers him.
Yeah.
So Hamlet has got to be like 27 minimum, which is too old for a regency.
Fair, I am 26 and I could not run a country.
Well, we could talk about the limitations of the monarchy another time, and I'm sure we will, but we don't have time in this episode to talk about how no one can run a country.
That's fair.
Tempting as it is, we'll have to do that another time. Because right now
And
we're talking about how Hamlet kind of repeatedly tells Horatio that he loves him.
He do.
He is a lot less mean to Horatio than he is to Ophelia. or
And for
anyone
that
else in the
matter,
play.
everyone else. Yeah. It's
The
a real
people,
Mr. Darcy moment.
honestly, the people Hamlet is nicest to are, in order, 1, Horatio, 2, the actors who show up for the play within a play who he really liked when he was in Wittenberg.
Yeah.
These are the people Hamlet likes in this play. His favourite actors and his best friend. Little bit gay as an order of emotional priorities. But you do have to interpret it. You cannot look at this and say this is clearly a gay relationship. I think it's a perfectly plausible reading. I think it's very easy to look at this and say, I'm going to play this as a gay relationship. But you are not contradicting the text if you don't do that.
It's a deep and intimate relationship without specific direction in text.
Yeah. Taking another controversial stance, people can be friends.
Well, now you just sound like someone on Tumblr talking about two people of different races in a TV show.
I am taking a very anti-fanfic stance that men can be friends, and it cannot be a gay thing sometimes. But this is this is the thing about the relationship with Horatio and the relationship with Ophelia, is that you have this emotionally deep, on both sides, both of them genuinely care about the other, both of them look out for the other relationship between Hamlet and Horatio. And then you have this societally sort of being pushed as the interpreter. Like everyone around them wants to interpret the Hamlet Ophelia thing as a sex thing.
Yeah.
And neither of them seem particularly into it. Because Ophelia is like, yeah, Hamlet's been writing me a lot of love letters lately. And her brother and her dad are like, you should not go there because he will ruin your reputation, because that's what princes do. And she's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, Ophelia doesn't. The thing is, Ophelia doesn't, in a lot of the play, doesn't express emotions towards or about other people until after they are dead.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
Hamlet is in no way exempt from this.
Yes, it's genuinely difficult to read Ophelia as being romantically or sexually into Hamlet. She mostly seems mildly embarrassed by the whole Hamlet situation.
They are just two babies of opposite genders sitting next to each other on a mat while everyone around them goes, oh, they're in love.
Yes. So here we come to. So I have two. Well, I'm not going to enumerate because I haven't actually counted. I have a number of possible readings of Hamlet to offer you.
Hit me.
One of them is Hamlet is ace, okay? Or at the very least, at this point in his life when he is dealing with his dad being dead and him being given a revenge quest by a ghost, not currently in an emotional place to be doing romance with anyone, actually.
Oh, BBC Sherlock core of him.
Honestly, because what the Hamlet-Ophelia relationship reads to me like compulsive heterosexuality.
I can see that, yes.
Like that's how that reads to me, is that you've got these two people who have exchanged enough words for everyone around them to go, oh, is Hamlet your boyfriend? And at that point, it's just very awkward. And Hamlet is not a person who likes awkward or deals
No,
with it gracefully.
he's not very good at people.
He's not very good at people. He strikes me as somebody who would be like, okay, I'm writing letters to Ophelia now. That's sure, why not? I like Ophelia just fine.
It very much, there are moments, I wouldn't say consistently throughout the entire play, but there are moments when Hamlet and Ophelia have very strong, you are in the closet and have just been asked for your crush's name energy. Like, you just, oh
Yes.
God, name any man. A man. Hamlet, that's a man.
Yes, I think I would really enjoy a version of Hamlet where Hamlet and Ophelia are giving each other awkward looks to the camera as everyone around them keeps going on about how in love they are, and they're like, hi, yeah, I know. I can't make them shut up either. Just go with it.
I think in a universe with less drama, they would have made an excellent lavender marriage.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, they would have both had their guys. They would have both had their castle. They would have been fine. There's space.
And I think with that reading, you can also sort of account for Ophelia
And the
better,
marriage
because
was-
Ophelia having some kind of emotional and cognitive break, I think is the best way to describe what we kind of see in text.
Yes.
It's really hard to believe that that's because Hamlet was mean to her, because we see so little of her actually being interested in Hamlet, caring about Hamlet.
So We
objecting in the
truly,
least when told to break it off with Hamlet.
truly, we do not see any evidence that this is an aberration of Hamlet's character as well.
No, we don't. Um,
Like, he's not awful, he's not a monster, he's not even that much of a dick, but he's not, like, nice to people
he's not nice to
habitually.
people. Their biggest scene together is at the play when he is like performing his madness for the court, but mostly he's just sort of lying with his head in her lap, being catty,
Yeah.
and she seems more amused by this than anything.
Yeah, like, I can buy that they are friends, but that it does, I think, seem like he is not a person whom you would be surprised to have suddenly be rude to you.
Right. And I find it an implausible reading that Ophelia's break is because Hamlet doesn't love her and she's lovesick. And that just doesn't seem like it's in the text. Not
Yeah.
also not in the text, but to me much more plausible as the way people would work. Ophelia having her break because she has realized that heterosexuality is truly compulsory and she is never going to get to do anything else. This is in fact the constraint of my life is am I in a relationship with Hamlet is literally going to be the it. This is it. This is the question of this is my personality now. This is the bound of my existence is who am I going to marry, and then I have to marry them, which is going to suck.
And also, like, I think quite distinctively, Hamlet and Ophelia do have dialogue that is, I don't know how to phrase this, sexually charged without being emotionally charged. A lot of
Yeah.
dialogue between Hamlet and Ophelia is basically has a lot of slightly smutty jokes
Yes,
without
especially in public. Although to be fair, that Hamlet is also very much performing at that moment when he's
he
making the
is,
sex jokes.
but the thing is that they are not emotionally charged, and it's the kind of thing that we know from other plays that Shakespeare can write deeply emotionally charged lovers' dialogue.
Yes,
We know from other plays that he can do deeply emotionally charged lovers' dialogue whilst making smutty jokes.
yes.
In this,
Beatrice and Benedict do a wonderful line in being deeply sincere and also making smutty jokes.
yes. In Ophelia, however, mostly make jokes at each other and then don't communicate.
Yeah.
Like,
So
the "shall I lie upon your lap" joke is pretty much exclusively responded to by Ophelia with, "What? No."
and then Hamlet has to spell out that he was making a dirty joke, and she's like rolling her eyes. Fine, yes,
"Oh,
okay, I get your
what?
dirty
Still no."
joke. Still no, but now I understand that I'm supposed to be participating in a bit.
Like, I feel like it is not nothing that Ophelia has the "I don't think anything" line. Like, I have no thoughts in my head about you, Hamlet. To which Hamlet goes, "There should be nothing between your legs," which is one of the greatest lines of all time.
And then he tells her to go to a nunnery, and
There's so much going on in there. There's a lot happening. It's just that none of it is chemistry between these two characters.
yes, and I think it doesn't ring true to read Ophelia as lovesick, but it does ring true to read Ophelia as crushed by the realization of her inability to perform heterosexual womanhood.
Yes.
There is obviously a queer reading available of Hamlet and Horatio. We've kind of talked about that. I, you know, I'm not going to make the case that it's fully in the text. I'm not going to make the case that you can't get there from the text. You obviously can. It is less explicit than some of the other queer things Shakespeare wrote.
Yeah.
Some of his sonnets would
There are some very gay sonnets.
some very gay sonnets, whereas Hamlet is like a little bit gay.
The thing is, Hamlet and Horatio feel, I would say, like the most like a lived in day to day queer pairing in any Shakespeare.
Yeah.
I would not say they are the most romantically or sexually charged queer pairing you can read into Shakespeare, but they do have a kind of easy familiarity, which is not actually Shakespeare's bread and butter romance wise.
Yeah. You can do a lot with that pairing. I don't think you can particularly. I don't think it works very well as a sort of mutual pining thing. You can do it very well as Horatio pining over Hamlet. I think you could also do something lovely with your staging and be like, well, when we say schoolmates, when we say they were, when they were at university together, eyebrow waggle, they were roommates.
Oh my god, they were roommates.
I think it would work really well as to be like, these guys, both queer. We don't need to define specific sublabels beyond that necessarily, but these two queer guys totally hooked up while they were at university and are still friends.
Yeah,
That would seem right to me.
this seems very plausible.
Which brings us to my other take on Hamlet. This is for the third time of cancellation.
Oh god.
Reading Hamlet with an eye to queerness in general, do you know what I realized?
What did you realise?
Hamlet is fanfic.
Okay, so we're going for offending everybody. We've said Shakespeare is good, we've said Shakespeare is bad.
And now we're saying that Hamlet exists in conversation with some other play that I haven't read.
A specific one? Or
A play that would have been known to the audience. This is a take on a story that is known to the audience. This is why we have so many specifically named characters, why their introductions are so weird. Because we have a lot of characters here who we get this little potted introduction of, this guy's back. In a way that makes sense if you do, in fact, know this guy. And you'll be excited to see that this guy's back. Oh, it's Laertes. We like Laertes. We know what Laertes is about, which is why he has these two fairly chunky scenes with no other characterization, because he doesn't need it, because we already know Laertes.
is this what I believe scholars refer to as the Hamlet? I cannot pronounce
I
do not
guess
have an accent that allows for words to have just a U and an R in them.
Yeah, I guess. But not necessarily in the sense of a prequel. This could be a missing scenes type thing, which also would explain why there's so much futzing around in the middle with nothing happening. We're waiting for the time to pass while the Norwegians get their act together to invade. I don't necessarily mean this seriously.
I mean, it is a very serious academic theory.
Right. The reason I don't necessarily mean it seriously is I am not a serious academic, and I don't
You
want to make
shock me.
factual claims about this that I have not got the knowledge or expertise to start backing up. What I have done is read a lot of fanfic and a lot of original books.
Yeah.
Hamlet, when read with a view to is this queer, felt to me like a story told in the same mode as fanfic. Here's these characters who were minor in the original, but I want to spend more time with them. Here's these characters, and I want to see what happened to them next. Here's this canon event of Ophelia's death that I have to put in because it canonically happened, but I don't really need to put in all the structural work to explain it because everyone already knows that this happens. So I'm literally going to tell that scene from the point of view of these other characters over here watching it happen, and give us some emotional beat from these two characters over here who are not at that funeral in canon. It reads that way to me. It feels that way of, I have things I want to look at about this story that were not in the story I was told. So the story I am telling to you is focusing on these other characters and these other scenes and giving you young Hamlet's perspective on these events instead of old Hamlet. I'm bringing back some of our favourites. I'm killing off Polonius because it's really funny to kill off Polonius.
It is pretty funny to kill off Polonius, to be
And
fair.
I'm making it just a little bit more queer than the original.
The thing is, what appeals to me about this reading is, in a lot of ways, so I read a lot of fan studies academia, and one of the things that bugs me about fan theory academia is it's very focused on the prevalence of gayness as a sort of very mechanical item.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the two theories that irritate me most amongst popular theories of why fanfic is so gay are, one, all media is about men, therefore, if you want to do shipping, you have to ship men. Which is...
I have heard this theory. It rings
irritates
true for
me.
some fandoms where you really don't have many other options.
It irritates me when you look at the thing is, it's a theory that falls apart when you look at individual shows rather than a list of all the characters who are popular on AO3.
Yes.
Like, it's a theory that assumes all characters exist equally on equal platforms, and the process of shipping is simply arriving at a new fandom and picking the characters that match the things you like. And I don't dispute that that is how some people approach fandom.
Sure.
I think it's a push to say that is the cause of all fanfiction.
Right. I think it is an error to make that leap from fan work tends to be quite gay to the gayness is the only reason to do fan work.
just has big like men and I don't know what it's called, but the weird thing you get sort of alpha men types talking about like men in prison or men in the army, like, oh, they were situationally gay. It's like, oh my god, Destiel is a men's prison pairing. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a very mechanical approach to an emotional problem. And the other half of the thing I find unhelpful is the idea that it's a representation thing, which I just don't think is the way people think on a really one-to-one level. I don't think, as a rule, people insert representation on purpose like that.
No,
Into
I think you
reading.
see that there's a sort of perpetually recurring you are a sort of a perpetually recurring lecture that goes, there's not enough lesbian content, you are all doing life, you're doing art wrong by not having more lesbians in it because this is bad representation, you are over-representing the men, you must all go and write more lesbians.
I
This
just think
persuades
like,
no one to do anything because that's not how people make their decisions on what to write.
and like, okay, maybe this is like my obviously like I exist within very niche and I wouldn't say underrepresented necessarily, but like not represented demographics being like within the smaller sub of the queer umbrella.
Yep.
I don't think I've ever watched a show or read a book, even subconsciously looking for where to put the ace rep in. And that's kind of the
Right.
way that a lot of people in fan theory seem to think people insert gay subtext. It's just they're like, where can I fit the gay subtext that I want to have here into it?
Yes, and I
As
agree. That's
opposed
what
to
it
my
feels like.
lived experience as a queer person makes me more open to readings which are queer.
Right. You don't come to Hamlet and you go, I need a gay pairing for Hamlet. It
I
must
mean,
be
you
Horatio.
slightly did.
I slightly did. But if as the person who is not reading for the purpose of doing that analysis, you don't
Yeah.
look at the play and say, who can I pair Hamlet with? You encounter the play and you go, Hamlet and Horatio have got a really interesting thing going on.
Yeah, like you do not have to be wearing shipping goggles to think that whatever's going on with Professor X and Magneto is a little bit gay.
It is a little bit gay.
It's a tiny bit gay.
Just especially in the movies. It's
Oh
just
my god.
those two old men have got something a bit gay going on.
The introduction of, we're going to get around to this at some point, but the introduction of the characters in the first X-Men movie, where they're on that walkway and it's
It
just
is
like, there's no text. It's literally, there is no text. It's just like a conversation about the plot. They just threw Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart in there and went, you know what to do. And they went, yeah, gay shit.
right. It's beautiful. It's acted beautifully because there's literally the conversation they have is their disagreement about political tactics. And the scene they portray is we have got a 60-year history of gay shit, and we
This is
are here
someone
to
in the
continue.
minority camp. Like, I prefer them as divorced than current datings. I just think they're a
Oh,
better pairing.
they have a delightful tension of knowing each other's worst aspects and regrettably still liking each other.
Truly. But my point is, what is interesting to me about the read of Hamlet as fanficky is it has a sense of a text which is far, far more interested in the inner workings and emotions of characters than it does in the mechanical facts of the sequence of events
Yes.
being portrayed on stage, which is
That,
the most fanfic of energy, unless you start inserting like sex pollen.
yes, that is exactly what I mean. Is that
And
this
there
it
are
reads like a text where the audience already knows what's up with Ophelia and Hamlet,
and there
but
are a
you don't
huge
reiterate it.
number there are a huge number of potential slash likely sources for Hamlet, including the Hamlet that I mentioned earlier when you brought this up, which is the idea that there is a previous play, possibly even a previous Shakespeare play, which he's responding to. But also, like I mentioned earlier, of Saga Cracker, because I studied it at university. There's one in Gesta de Norum. There's one in the Spanish tragedy, I want to say. Thomas Kidd? Wikipedia, help me. Yes, Spanish tragedy. Thought for a second it might have been French. Um, there's a lot of believed sources, and the thing that's really interesting to me about it is that we can't pin it down to a specific source because this is just a story type that exists in this era.
Right, right. It's
The
a
bit
little bit
with the vengeance of the deceased king and the pretending to be mad slash someone else slash poor, all of this is in the common parlance of literature at this time. And this is the version of that that is introspective.
Yes. This is these characters that we know and this sequence of events that we are familiar with. What's going on in the prince's head? What does it feel like to have your dad's ghost show up and tell you to do revenge?
And the thing is, it doesn't need to be fan fiction or an adaptation or a reimagining of any of these specific predecessors, in the same way that if you write a version of Cinderella which is entirely about her feelings about her, abusive past, you don't need that to be a specific version of Cinderella. It doesn't have to be a response to the Disney version.
Exactly. Or in the same way, we had a rash of dark and gritty versions of superheroes. And
I
what they
have
were a
many
response to was
opinions about.
superheroes as a genre. And what if we made them dark and gritty?
Yes, and the thing that's interesting is this response to that genre has so dominated the cultural landscape that I don't think we're really capable of
We've
reading the
forgotten the
genre
genre.
without it.
Yes.
It's kind of like how Blazing Saddles killed cowboy movies.
Like, you can't play
Sometimes,
it straight anymore because now everyone's thinking about Blazing Saddles.
exactly, like sometimes a response to a genre so overshadows the genre that it becomes, as we said in the Howl's Moving Castle episode, Mount Fuji.
Yes. Yes.
Hamlet is gay Mount Fuji. Discuss.
Hamlet is named Mount Fuji. That's our thesis.
Okay, new episode title, forget what I said before.
Should we? I think we should leave it there. I think we've made our thesis. We've come to a point where we agree on an analysis, which is nice. Shall we
I
draw
think we
some
have enough
numbers?
options, so
Okay.
I'm not actually going to do that. I think BBC Sherlock might actually already be in the hat, so we can get back to the hat later.
We can get back
However,
to
I
that.
will say, I don't know offhand who originally played Hamlet, but I bet he wouldn't have said weird aphobic shit in public. So, Benedict Cumberbatch, how does it feel to be less woke than someone from the Renaissance? Okay, first things first, actually, is Hamlet going back in the hat? Holder of the hat.
I think we should put a different Shakespeare in because my memory is that we originally wrote Shakespeare and then we narrowed it down to a specific text. I think we should put in a different Shakespeare
I'm
text.
into it. Do you have a preference?
Just on the basis of fame, it should probably be Macbeth, but if you don't like Macbeth, we can do one of the others.
I was going to say, should we switch to a non-tragedy?
Should we do a comedy? Should we do like Midsummer Night's Dream? Just because or we could do
I
Midsummer Night's
love
Dream
Midsummer Night's Dream.
because you'd love it, or we could do Much Ado About Nothing because I love it.
I adore
Although I
Much Ado. It's my favourite Shakespeare.
put Much Ado in there. Let's treat ourselves.
Okay, for a
Treat
treat, we
ourselves
can have
to
Much
like,
Ado.
snarky chaos bisexuals.
Okay, give me a second. I'm going to put Much Ado About Nothing in, and then I'm going to roll some dice. Typing noises, typing noises, typing noises. My laptop has very loud keys.
They're not coming through. It's all right.
Yes, but I'm in a recording hut, which makes everything loud.
There.
Okay,
One day it'll be winter,
so
and then your recording hut will be nicer.
yes, it's quite warm in here. But I have just spent a week in Italy, so I'm sort of used to just having rivers of sweat flowing down my back at all times.
Podcasting is a glamorous profession.
It's extremely glamorous. Okay, so how many hats are we on? 20? Yes.
Think so? Yeah.
Okay, I am going to generate a number. I do not have... Actually, I do have a 20-sided die. I could use that. Number 8! What is number 8?
Number 8.
Religious allegory! Oh, this could go
Excellent.
really well or really, really badly.
My favorite form of interpretation.
Well, you got to have queer theory, so
I
I
did.
get to steal your baby.
It's all right. We can put it back in the hat.
Ooh, 24. Okay, I think that puts us squarely in the classics.
I think that's in the
Oh,
classics.
for
Yeah.
fuck's sake! Elder Scrolls. That's probably doable, but it means I have to learn about Elder Scrolls.
That's doable, but you probably don't have to actually play them.
Good, because I will not. I categorically refuse. I don't even play video games I like.
That's fair. If a little
Oh my
tragic.
god.
No, actually, the Elder Scrolls is
just-
great. The Elder Scrolls genuine. There are prophecies in this thing.
Yeah, no, that's probably good for religious allegory. I just refuse to play video games.
We'll find you a nice Let's Play.
We will have to. Because I
Will not otherwise be experiencing these games.
Video games are a really bad genre for somebody who has trouble with spacing out, chronic migraines, and poor laptop quality. It's kind of a holy trifecta.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
I'm genuinely pissed off that I got Elder Scrolls.
But
Because
that's
I
much.
was very much hoping you would get it so I could just passively consume it rather than have to think about it.
You poor thing. But on the other hand,
Ugh,
you signed up for this.
God damn it. I did sign up for this. Yeah, and then you put Elder Scrolls in the hat.
I put in
I read
one
Pern.
video.
I read Pern last time.
I watched Shazam.
Okay, Shazam is one movie.
Yes, but
There is
movies are
so much
hard.
Elder Scrolls. There is so much Elder Scrolls. Let's Plays are harder. Name one Let's Player who doesn't have an irritating voice.
Look, are you going to do it or not?
I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna bitch about it a lot.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you,
Tune
dear
in next
reader, and we'll
week
see you
for
next time.
me complaining incessantly about Elder Scrolls.
Look, this sucks is a valid take for any of these media.
I don't think it sucks. That's the thing, is if it sucked, I could say that. It's just that it's very not for me.
You'll have fun because you'll be doing a religious allegory about, the prophesied defeater of hell,
I
which
was
is not
one number
difficult
away.
to do.
I was one number away from getting Tamora Pierce.
Look,
This is
Tortal will still
homophobia
be
in
in the
action. Yes, but it would have been so much easier to do a religious allegory of.
I don't
I was
know.
2 away from The Matrix. Do you have
The
any
Matrix
idea
would
how
have been
easy that would have been?
that would have been great. We are going.
Ugh.
Here is my prediction for you. Actually, the reader is now going to write us many angry emails about how we should have done the Matrix anyway.
Oh, they really are. It's okay, we will get to The Matrix, and there are so many schools of analysis we could get for The Matrix.
There is
It
no
might even
possible
be
bad school for the Matrix.
the Muppet adaptation.
I would see that 16 times.
I would go broke. You know how I said I would go broke watching Art House Shazam?
Two things can be true at
Similar
once.
feelings. I have equally strong feelings about the Muppet Matrix.
If there are
I
any
think
billionaires out there who would like to waste their money in a non-lethal manner, please commission Art House Shazam and Muppet Matrix.
hire me. I've been writing Art House Shazam in my head ever since we've made that episode. Duck can confirm because I've been messengering him about it.
It's true. You have. And you've been having such a good time.
Usually while I was supposed to be working.
Boss makes $1, I make a dime. That's where I write Art House Shazam on company time.
DC, hire me.
And you can write Art House Shazam on company time officially.
Look, I have still not emotionally recovered from finding out that I knew more about Moon Knight than any of the writers of Moon Knight. The fact that I have not been hired to write any superhero adaptations is an affront and a crime. I have more nerd cred than any of you bitches.
You heard it here,
Anyway.
folks.
Tune in next week for my feelings about Elder Scrolls
Good luck.
and the fact that I've been forced to consume it.
Join us next week for Dia's feelings on the matter of being forced to have feelings about Elder Scrolls.
God damn it.
Bye.
Bye-zy bye.
You've been listening to Analysis Roulette, a podcast applying a randomly selected mode of analysis to a randomly selected creative work, just to see what happens. Your hosts have been Dia and Duck. You can find us on Spotify or on YouTube, and if you'd like to get in touch, you can send us an email at analysisroulette@gmail.com. And remember, if you like our show, share it with your friends, and if you don't like our show, share it with your enemies. Thanks.